Hi everyone, welcome, hello, happy Tuesday. I'm so excited because today I'm going to be talking to Samara about decolonizing the tarot. It's going to be great. I'm so excited that you're here. We're just going to wait for her to join us and then we're going to get started. But if you are new here, welcome. Hello, I'm Michelle, the founder of Holisticism, and we are actually doing a bunch of classes this month on the tarot, which I'm very excited about. All with 4 different practitioners who all have a really different perspective on the tarot and what it means and how it works. So I'm excited to present all of them to you because I think that that's one of the most important things that we can do when we're introducing wellness and well-being practices is show different perspectives on how people use these practices in their lives and where they come from and all of it, right? I see that Samara just joined, so I'm going to wait for them to enter the chat. And we'll get started. We'll have plenty of time for you to ask your questions for Samara about tarot and decolonizing the tarot. And let's see if I can go live with them right now. Waiting for it. Hi!
Hello! How are you, Ella?
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I am. I'm good. This is the first live that I've done in a while, so I'm so happy that I get to do it with you.
Yay! Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy that we're both, accessing our joy, having a good day.
Yeah, seriously. It's important to not put it off in another corner or anything, but to have joy, to have time, to make time for joy.
Yes. Yeah. I think that makes this whole thing a lot more sustainable if we can have a little bit of joy every day.
The whole thing being life, and also
yes, all of that.
Totally. Well, I'm so excited. I was telling everyone before you popped on that you're teaching a class with us this month in one of our 4 tarot classes. I don't know if you've seen the other tarot classes that are up, but holy shit, it is such a spread. I'm so excited.
Yes, it's a spread. That's definitely a tarot joke, but I am so excited for sure. Definitely going to take the
Oh, please. Don't worry, I'll hook you up. And we've been talking about, we've been planning this class for a while.
Yes.
And so it couldn't be a more perfect time to be talking about decolonizing the tarot. Maybe that was a little bit of witchiness on both of our parts to be like, this is something that needs to happen. So can you tell me a little bit more about your introduction to tarot? And then I loved that you said, and because you wrote a beautiful caption about this workshop, about how the tarot originated in Italy. I'm Italian, that's why I'm into tarot, because I've studied Tarot de Marseille. And you're like, no, we're taking it back. Let's decolonize it and talk about it. So tell me more about how you ran into it and how you've come to that point now in your career.
Yeah, okay. So my tarot journey actually started through this whole lens of me trying to get out of an oppressive situation that I was in. So I was actually in a pretty abusive relationship and I stumbled onto this YouTuber who was reading tarot and basically explaining my entire relationship to me and then telling me how to get out of it. And I was like,
oh,
okay, I see you.
You're I guess I can't ignore this.
Right.
I mean, I can, but it's going to keep coming back up.
Yes. Yeah. There were multiple YouTube videos. It was this one YouTuber who kept doing multiple videos talking to me about my own life. And I was like, okay, gonna get a Patreon account, patronize this lady, and get some tarot cards.
It's okay, I guess I have to just start paying attention now.
Right, it's just got to be a thing. So,
were you scared to buy tarot cards?
I wasn't, because I was just so moved by how powerful the interaction was for me. I also never had any exposure to tarot until college. I was very sheltered, going to church every single Sunday for my whole life. And I really didn't know anyone who was into anything besides Christianity, Judaism, Islam. And so my whole spiritual awakening really happened in college. And I had no reason, reason from my own life to associate the
Yeah.
tarot with fear. And then learning all of that started to come later as I started to actually
Got it.
practice it.
So I think that this is a question I hear all the time. I'm sure you do too, of people who come from a religious upbringing or background, or just hear tarot or like Ouija boards or any sort of magic being associated with like the devil and the occult. So I'm happy to hear that that wasn't your experience, that you were like, oh my God, stepping to the dark side.
Uh-huh.
But do you have any like recommendation? What's your perspective on that? I guess as someone who obviously has studied, are you religious now?
No. So now I have unsubscribed from Christianity just because as I've opened my own understanding of how God works, I
Yeah,
don't feel like I need to put myself kind of into one particular theology. So I kind of dabble around in
cool.
a lot of things. Yeah.
Awesome. I feel that. I'm taking a Judaism class right now. It's like 16 weeks about Judaism. And it's so interesting. I'm not Jewish, but like just so interesting to learn, right? Everyone's perspective.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. So you're not religious anymore. And did that kind of come around or come about as you were exploring spirituality and things like the tarot?
So that actually came about from another decolonization process. I lived in Brazil for 6 months while I was in college, and the city that I was living in was actually the first stop on the transatlantic slave trade. And so
Wow.
it was just such a powerful, I like specifically reorganized, like I started taking Portuguese in college so that I could be able to go do this
Cool.
program for 6 months, because I was like, I want to go to a place where I like know my ancestors were, right? And so I was like, I'm going to
Mm.
go here. um, and so I went and I learned that there they have really held on to their West African spirituality, and
Okay.
they directly see the link between the slavery and the colonialism and Christianity. And so I didn't see any Black people practicing Christianity the whole time I was there. And
Wow.
I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I don't, yeah. And so I kind of had my whole mind broken open, and I was like, okay, I can really see why I need to kind of decolonize my own understanding of why I'm so attached to this and why like my family is and things like that.
Right. Right. Because even like hoodoo in the American South is very much based on Catholicism and Christianity and the
Yeah.
merging of those two cultures. So
Mhm.
that's so fascinating that outside of the US, nothing, it's very like Christianity is colonizing.
Right. And it was so explicit. Like they would, I was learning a lot about Black history there, and they would take us to these beautiful churches that were like built by slaves, and they would talk
Right.
to us about all the exploitation that happened. And like, it was very, Christianity was not cool over there at all.
We're like, okay, we're gonna take a hard left out of Christianity.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that was your first was that your first sort of decolonization experience?
I would say, yeah, where I started to really have a lot of pieces come together for me all at once, and I just made like dramatic life changes because of it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then, so you were kind of working with tarot then, because it sounds like this was in college. And
Mhm.
as you started to, like, how did you know the tarot was for you and was a tool you wanted to continue to use? I feel like so many people are like, oh, yeah, I've got a couple tarot decks, but I don't really use it.
Yeah. Well, so I started off, I remember read somewhere online that to just like try to pull a card every day. And then as you go through your day, take a couple of notes about like what happened for you that day. And that helps you kind of build a relationship between how the cards are trying to talk to you. And
Yeah.
so I did that every day for like maybe like a month, not super long, but I started to realize that like I would see a card and automatically like have deep feelings about how my day
Yeah.
was going to go, or
Yeah.
something I needed to do. And it just really started to feel like I was playing this fun little game where I could like talk to God but not have to read like a Bible or something like that. And it felt really special.
That's cool. Yeah, it's kind of like a spiritual dictionary. I remember like
Mm-hmm.
when you're learning how to read, you have to write your own dictionary, or at least
Mm-hmm.
I did. And
Yeah.
like you learn these words and you write them down, you write what the meaning is to you in context of like what you as a first grader or kindergartner is using them as. And I recommend for everyone who's like doing any sort of intuition work, like create your own spiritual dictionary. Don't look up what things mean, right? Like you don't need to look up what a snake means when you like walk past it on a path. Like what do you feel like that saint calling to you, instead of just deferring automatically to the wisdom of other people? Like what happens when we do an investigation for ourselves and just like try to get in there? So you did that for a month and you're like, this hits.
Yeah. I was like, I could keep doing this.
Cool. And then did you like keep it a secret or did you start reading for other people immediately?
No, I went a whole year without ever even like telling anyone that I was reading tarot. I would actually like put all my tarot decks away in like a drawer whenever people came over because I was like, I don't want people to think I'm like one of those like weird off the wall people like trying to be a
Uh-huh.
witch. Now I want everyone to know that I'm trying to be a witch. But
Everyone.
exactly.
Yeah, that's so interesting, right? Do you think that's like an aspect of our early 20s? Or do you think that's like more decolonization, right? Of like we just want to you don't want to be like a witch or weird or different because like you just want to be accepted by heteronormative patriarchal capitalist structure. And if I mean we've learned after generations and generations that if you're different and you push against that, you get burned at the stake, right?
Right, right.
So I guess like I mean what do you think it was for you that made you sort of shy about sharing that aspect of yourself?
Well, I started as I was like starting to just learn more about tarot. I did stumble upon those like blogs on the corner of the internet that are talking about how evil it is and how, you'll be possessed if you read tarot and all these things. And I was like, oh, okay, well, first of all, I don't want to like alienate people if they think I'm like trying to do something bad.
Mm.
My parents were still kind of reconciling their own relationship with Christianity after I shared my experiences in Brazil with
Oh
them.
wow.
And so I didn't want to be like too far off the edge where they were like, okay, well, you quit Christianity and now you're evil. So,
Right. You've really jumped the shark.
right, exactly. So I was like, okay, how can I like moderate my own?
You're like, not to scare you guys, but
Right.
by the way, I'm also a socialist now, so
Yes, yeah. Well, they knew I was a socialist. They were coming to terms with that.
so you're kind of like slowly unveiling that these aspects of yourself. And then when you started reading for other people, was that just for fun? Was it surprising? Were you like nervous about reading for others?
Well, I started dating a new person whose mom or yeah, whose mom is a Freemason and whose grandma
Mom is a
was
Freemason?
actually
Whoa, I thought only men could be Freemasons.
well, she studied it. I don't know. I
Oh,
guess
cool.
she like did the whatever it is that you do. I'm not super versed in that, but
Cool.
mom is in
Sweet.
that world, and then grandma was actually a bruja in Mexico, and
Amazing.
so she like read tarot cards all the time, and their family was like so normalized to have tarot cards all over the place and always be asking the cards questions, and
Yeah.
so when I started to like integrate with them, I was like, oh, I can also read tarot with you all, and like you all can teach me, and it became such like
Yeah.
a collaborative process and a way to like get to know this new person that I was falling in love with. So
So
it,
cool.
yeah, it was so beautiful.
Oh, I love that. My partner and I, like one of the things that I love about him is that he had like three tarot decks when we first started dating. Now we've got like, 15 in our house on like my
Oh.
witch altar. But we always pull a card too on the first day of the new year, to be like our card of the year. That it's something that I really appreciate about him as he's a cis white male,
Yes.
that he's into the tarot.
I love that. I love that so much. What's your card for this year?
I think I pulled the universe card from the Voyager tarot deck.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. Um, so you met this person and that sort of like opened up your relationship to the tarot. And then it sounds like, did you have a sort of like reckoning with tarot the same way that you did with Christianity, where you kind of looked at it and you're like, wait a tick, this is kind of fucked up.
Yeah, so that kind of started to happen as I was integrating the tarot into my life way back in the very beginning because
Okay.
just the way I was raised, my parents were very like, we're only going to show you images of people of color as much as we can. Like all of my dolls were black,
Wow.
all of my doctors were women of color. Like they were very
Wow.
strategic about the representation aspect. And so I was like, when I first went to go even buy my own tarot deck, I was like, well, I don't want to only look at white faces. And
Okay.
so it was such a struggle to just like find a deck that I felt comfortable using because just the
Yeah.
idea of like I need to look at these white faces to guide me was just something that I was not down
Right.
for.
You're like, this has never been any part of my life, so I'm not going to
Right.
start now. So
Yeah,
what deck did you
exactly.
end up going with?
So the first deck I ever got, I actually have it right here. It's called Everyday Tarot. And so the people on it are like this gold color.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have the gold people and then also purple people. And I was like, okay, this seems neutral enough. Like I don't I can't ascribe race to these people if I wanted to.
Yeah, it's like the cartoon dog, right? Like everyone's different colors, so it's like, okay, cool.
Right, right,
Actual colors,
exactly.
like green.
Yeah.
Cool. And did you feel like you resonated with the deck right off the bat?
I did actually. I feel like I said, I was doing my pull every morning, and I really just started to see so many little synchronicities happening in my life just from training my brain to be looking for like magic to be happening, really.
Right.
And so it just
That's
became
such
such
a
a
good
special
example.
relationship.
That's totally what you're doing. You're like teaching yourself how to pay attention.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Cool. Cool. So you got your first tarot deck, you started reading, and you from the jump, you were like, Rider Waite's not cutting it for me. By the way, Rider Waite has like a super. Everyone go Google Pamela Coleman Smith. Like
I
it's really
know.
problematic. Pamela Coleman Smith was the artist who did all of the illustrations. She may have been non-gender binary, um,
Right.
right? She also may have been biracial. There's
Yeah,
not that much information on her, but she was definitely underpaid for her work.
I
And then she
know.
also wasn't like referenced in that in the Rider Waite deck for like almost 100 years or something crazy. And arguably, like the deck is what it is because of her imagery. So Rider Waite, I think a lot of people don't. They get like a weird, funny feeling around it, and I think that they're picking up on like actually that sordid past. So if you're listening to this and you're like, never really got into the tarot, maybe just try like another deck. Another deck that I really like is, I don't have the front, but it looks like this, the Modern Witches Tarot deck.
Ooh.
And it's really cool. It's all women of color, like different women and sort of like female identifying people. It's pretty cool. And it's this amazing Black British witch created it, the Modern Witch Tarot deck. It's really cool. We have this community called the North Node, and
Mhm.
when someone joins, I send them one of the cards from the tarot deck, and it's
Oh,
like their card of the year too. So that's our deck of choice. But
that's so beautiful.
can you talk to me a little bit more beyond like sort of going outside of the Rider Waite deck for looking for tarot? Can you talk a little bit more about what decolonizing tarot means to you?
Yeah, so I think about decolonization really as from like a mindset shift, like you're kind of decolonizing yourself and the way that you think.
Mm,
And so the way that I incorporate that into my tarot practice is just thinking about the way that we look at tarot a lot of the times is that we are giving our power away to this like external entity, whatever it is that works behind the cards. And
yeah,
then the cards will tell us like, good idea, bad idea, like you will
right,
be happy, you won't be happy, and
right,
like all of these things. And so even the concept of like fortune telling and how the cards have that whole history of
yeah.
like just people going and asking like what should I do with my life, how can will I ever find love, all of these things that is so entrenched in how we see the tarot. And I just consider that to be so colonial because we live in a world where studies have shown us that people who are socioeconomically disenfranchised, who are people of color, who are queer, live with very little self-determination, so very little sense that they have control over their own destiny. And so if this whole practice has kind of built itself around being able to like tell people what to do and tell people
Mhm.
how to live, then how can we just like completely detach and unsubscribe from that entirely and start to rethink why we're even using these cards in the first place?
Wow, I love that. That is so true. I think that's a similar relationship to astrology, right? People are looking for the sort of divinatory aspects to it. Like, how can this tell me my future, or like who I'm gonna love, or what my life will be like um, in times of like duress, which happens a lot in 2020. And I don't know about you, but I've definitely had pulled a tarot spread before and been like, fuck. this is not what I wanted to see. And like almost maybe it ruined my day or like ruined my perspective on a relationship. And like I let it get the best of me almost, as opposed to coming from a sort of empowered, personally sovereign place when it comes to like reading. How do you teach people that when you first get started? Because so many people just want answers for the future, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do for clients, and I'm trying to actually formalize this, so I just have like an email that I send out to everyone that books with me that just explains like, I'm not here to tell you your future. You have incredible amounts of free will. Even kind of actually, I got inspired by your PDF about the Akashic Records, where you
Yeah,
have like
yeah.
the kinds of questions that work, the kinds of questions that will work less effectively.
Right.
And
Yes.
I've
Like
started to
you can
build
do
that
whatever
out.
you want, but like I wouldn't ask these ones.
Right, right. So I've started to build that out from the perspective of like, how can we
Cool.
reinforce that you have free will? Like, don't ask me a question that starts with will, like, will this ever
Right.
happen?
Right.
Should I do this? Like, really just trying to steer people away from any question that cedes their power to
Yeah.
me or to the cards. And that has really changed the kinds of questions and the kinds of conversations that I've been having with my clients for sure.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. With the same with the Akashic Records, which also like the name Akashic Records is totally problematic. It sort of like I love the Akashic Records, but they're not Hindu in origin, and Akasha is a Hindu word. So,
I didn't even
um,
know that. I
yeah,
have a
it's kind
fun
of
fact about tarot also exoticizing a non-Western culture, but I would love to
well,
hear more
okay,
about.
yes.
Mhm.
I'm like putting a pin in that because I want to hear about that
Yes.
immediately. I almost like want to drop what I'm about to say. But yeah, like the Akashic Records that we always say, like what's ask for the most likely outcome based on the trajectory that you're already on, as
Hmm.
opposed
Hmm.
to yes or no questions, because it's almost like multiverse theory, right? We have time is a flat circle. Sorry guys, not to go true detective on you, but time is a flat circle, and like all of these universes and these sort of the string theory that we have infinite possibilities living next to each other simultaneously, and we're just sort of like jumping from one universe into another based on our decisions. So in one world, maybe there is a life where I marry someone completely different than this life, right? Um, I'm getting a bit in the weeds, but it's all to say that like nothing's completely off the table. Like all possibilities are possibilities. It's just that we want to get the most likely outcome, and we want to hear like the most likely possibility based on the trajectory that we're on. And we can still change that if we want to, which is the cool thing. Like you write your destiny. You can get helpful hints to like help you make better decisions, but at the end of the day, like we have the power inside of us. Anyways,
Yeah.
tell me more about the word tarot exoticizing non-Western culture.
Yes. Okay. Well, not the word tarot, but there's a lot of mythology around how tarot came to be and
Mm-hmm.
what the cards mean and what they originally meant and all. And so you've probably looked into this, but Tarochi, like the card game, is where we got
Yeah.
the cards themselves. And then hundreds of years later, the French actually started to assign meanings to the cards,
Mm-hmm.
relating it back to ancient Egyptian mythology. So archaeologists have actually not been able to determine that there are direct links between what the French were saying the cards meant and what ancient Egyptian texts actually said. And I looked further into it and I found out that at the time, Egypt was a French colony. And so this was just part of a larger system of trying to exoticize and other the Egyptian people and say, like, oh, look at these like mystical people in Africa who know what the secrets of these cards. And it really had no basis in anything that was in ancient Egyptian texts at all.
Wow, that's not surprising at all. And also like, yeah, what the fuck? It's crazy. Yeah, Egypt, like this Egypt sort of like Egyptian craze in Europe is so
Mm-hmm.
interesting to look at. Like how much sort of modern mysticism came from that and
Mm-hmm.
around like the sort of turn of the century. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really insane. I was making a note for myself because as you were talking about how the Akashic records are kind of like looking at your trajectory and your most likely outcome, that reminded me that one of the other things I do to make sure that my readings are super empowering is just that I actually we'll use a spread that asks what's your ideal outcome, and then how do you know you're on the right path, and then some actions that you can take to like pivot yourself onto the path that's getting you your ideal outcome. And that has gone over super well. I tested it out on my sister a bunch of times, and then once my sister started getting results, I opened it to the world. But
you gotta have a guinea pig.
Oh yeah, my sister and my partner are my tarot guinea pigs for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah, I when I read Tarot de Marseille, which is sort of like what Rider-Waite, or I guess the modern tarot, is based off of, which to your point, was sort of like originated in Italy, then was brought over to the French courts. And I love it. It's so weird. It's really different than normal tarot. I love it because when you create a spread, when the cards are flipped upside down or different or whatever, it's not read as negative. It's just that this is this possible outcome, and then let's see the outcome when we flip all the cards upside, like right side up. And these are the two outcomes that you can choose. So if you don't sort of like fix or pay attention to what we talked about in this reading, your life will go the way that like the first reading goes. And if you decide that you want to change those things, like you just flip the card yourself, right? Like you draw your attention and you bring action to it. You can pick another outcome. And I just think, to your point, it's so much more empowering than being like, well, you got the tower, so I guess your relationship's over. See ya.
Yes. Oh, that's so powerful. And especially with reversals, because for some reason, every day, I have multiple decks at this point. I get reversals all the time. Like I'll pull 6 cards and 5 of them will be in reverse every single time. And I have to give a disclaimer actually when I'm reading with other people and just be like, so all of your cards are in reverse. This doesn't mean you should quit your job. It just means my cards are doing what they always do.
Doesn't mean your life's over.
Right. But the fear around getting reversed cards is so real. And for so long, when I was learning how to read the tarot, I had to sit with myself and be like, okay, the cards cannot always be telling me that like I'm being punished, my life is wrong. Like I really had to sit and be like, okay, assuming that I can't 100% of the time be fucking up, like what else could these cards be telling me?
Right. That's so, and like this, I feel like this whole conversation is like moving so beautifully full circle. That's so sort of puritanical Christian, right? Of like good versus bad, wrong versus right, evil versus not evil. And also like it reminds me of like masculine, feminine. And I wonder, we got a good question actually yesterday. Someone asked what your perspective on the masculine versus the words like masculine and feminine that are used so much in wellness and in mysticism as well. Like, what's your perspective on that? And how do you feel like those words have meaning still, or do you feel like we need to sort of replace them with something new? Because we know that the binary doesn't exist, right? So like trying to create this false binary, it's to me it's the same as like good versus evil almost. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much for asking that question. I had so much trouble. So I exist outside the gender binary. I don't identify as male or female. And I had so much trouble until very recently, even like feeling comfortable listening to podcasts, feeling comfortable kind of like immersing myself in this world where everyone's talking about femininity and masculinity. And I was like, okay, we know there's more than that. And also, it's just it was just so triggering to me to be like, I don't want to have to feel like I'm trying to tap into an energy that's associated with a gender as I'm actively like, you know,
like literally trying not to.
Right. Like in every other part of my life, I am not identifying with any kind of gender. And now I have to like decide whether I'm out of balance in my divine feminine or out of balance in my divine masculine. Yeah, it's so stressful. I think about this a lot with the tarot too, because most decks have people on them. Most of those people are, you know, cis people. So you'll have the Queen of Pentacles and it will be someone we're trained to think is a woman and all of this stuff. And what I do when I read, it gets really itchy for me when I see people pulling a card that has like an image that we've been trained to call a woman and saying like, oh, maybe this is a female in your life, or maybe this is like, you know, you're going to meet a man or something like that because of the person.
I feel like that's the laziest way you could read tarot. To not to be a dick, but I'm like, yo, really? Come on. That's
Yeah.
like what a 5-year-old would say, right?
Yeah, like, oh, King of Pentacles, this man is good with money. And it's just like, oh my
Is it your
God.
dad? Like, I don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it gets very itchy for me. I mostly will just skip over any reference to gender and we'll just be like, oh, it sounds like this person really is so deep into their inner world and they're so reflective and they're so
Mm,
meditative and it's a person who really thinks before they act and like just going straight into like the energy that the card is trying to convey and
mhm.
then doing the same with like, this person is really putting themselves out there. They're so action oriented. Things might be moving really fast in your life right now. Like, how can we just completely give
Mm,
no reference to the
right.
fact that at some point in the past, people associated someone's body with how they acted or showed up in the world?
Yeah. And that's, to your point, we even gender like suits, right? Like coins or cups or whatever, however you want to call them, as more feminine, right? And
Mm-hmm.
versus the action. I always think of them as like action versus sort of creative, instead of feminine versus masculine. But yeah, we follow we. What is it about us that just wants to like sort of create that binary? I guess it's we want to sort of define something, and it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to not define things because that's how we orient around them. But we need to almost create new language or create new ways to describe what we're seeing and what we're pulling in. I wonder if it would make us more intuitive if instead of falling to those sort of like tropes of masculine or feminine, the way that you read, being like, well, what is this energy? Like, what's this energy telling me? Instead of, oh, a queen, someone who's a queen, Beyonce is going to walk into your life. Like, that's not.
Right. I wish. We all wish.
Right, honestly, okay, that one we can keep that one,
Right.
but
Yeah, oh my God. It and I think even just like I know nothing about neurology or anything, but just from the concept of like decision fatigue and the amount of like transactions that your mind has to do in order to get from point A to point B. And so if we can just like remove the association that we have to make between like card, gender, and then message and just go
mhm,
straight from card to message, I think that just helps us flow so much easier.
yeah. And it strikes me also that even like trying to memorize what the cards are could be a form of sort of like colonizing our brains, right? Of just
Oh yeah.
instead of being thoughtful or intuitive around what it means in relationship to a spread, right? What a card means in relation to a spread, or even the person you're reading for, or even you. Like
Hmm.
trying to remember like the Five of Pentacles equals this thing, um,
Hmm.
is very like Western school and culture. Do you tend to sort of, I guess you've been doing this for so long, you probably have already kind of memorized what they all mean for yourself. But what do you recommend for someone who's just beginning who wants to get started?
Yeah, okay, this is a great question because I was really lucky, and whatever I happened to first Google about tarot taught me that A, like you pull a card every day, and B, don't read the book too early because then you will go into rote memorization
Yes.
and you won't actually like internalize anything.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even read I don't think I've read a full like guidebook of tarot all the way through. So there are some cards where I'm sure I've never even read someone else's interpretation of them.
Right.
And I was really just kind of like you were saying, like writing my own dictionary where I would pull a card and when I moved away from the daily pulls, it would still be like, okay, it's the new moon. I'm going to pull 6 cards or whatever. Card one, and then my reflections. Card two, and then my reflections. And I started to really compile for myself my own little dictionary of how I started to talk to the cards.
Yeah. Cool. And I'm sure that we're going to talk more about this in your class. By the way, everyone, if you're not signing up for class, what the fuck are you doing? Honestly.
Come
But
on.
really, go sign up for class. The link's in Holisticism's bio. We have a sliding scale for our workshops and everything that we're doing in Holisticism moving forward for the end of time. So that's really cool. So go and pick your price. And we believe in communal healing, as opposed to individual healing, which is why we're moving into a sliding scale model. It's more equitable. Um, and because like we really want to pay Samara for what they do. So, so everyone's happy, with this sliding scale model. It's actually working out really well so far. Knock on wood. I'm really excited about it. So go sign up is what I'm saying if you're watching this right now. Pricing goes from $9 up to $29, and you can pick whatever works for you. And if that you're still like, ooh, can't make $9 work right now, that's totally fine. Email me, we'll make it work. Like we'll figure it out. But what else can people expect from the class from you next week?
Yeah. So I'm a huge nerd. I have a degree in like I actually like very much bona fide nerd before I was doing any of this. I was in a lot of school. And I have a degree in the history of science, which basically just means I spent a lot of time thinking about why we believe what we believe. And
Cool. Oh
I
my
have
God,
taken a
that's
lot of
so
my
cool.
nerdiness and just dumped it into this workshop. And I may or may not cite journal articles um, in a way that I think is very accessible. I've been
I
trying to
love
like,
that.
moderate how academic-y I'm getting. And so I go through kind of like the westernization of tarot just from the fact that it started off in the West and was probably exoticizing ancient Egypt and just all of this. And then I go through the ways in which tarot is itself colonized.
Mhm.
So we've already been talking a little bit about that and all the fear around it and the vilification. And then I go into actual practical tips that people can use to start to retrain their brains. So, especially what we've been talking about, the gendering, how we can start to reimagine the different suits, and then a little bit about reversals as well.
Cool. Oh, it's gonna be so fun. I'm so excited. And
Yeah.
it's like all of our tarot workshops, I feel like in conjunction, they're so like are actually building on each other. None of you have talked to each other before this, I don't think. Maybe you astrally traveled and you had some sort of like, I don't know, witch round table and everyone was like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. But they all seem to go together so beautifully. And the point, behind doing these workshops and bringing together different practitioners was to provide different perspectives because like we're not all going to agree. Like you and I tend to agree on a lot of things, but we're not always all going to agree on the way that there are so many different ways to read tarot.
Yeah.
And like you'll find a million out there. And our goal and our intention is not to like tell people the right way to do anything. It's to provide options. And then you get to decide like what works best for you and what do you like. And like take everything with a grain of salt and take away the things that you love and forget the rest and then go have your own experience with it. At least to me, like at the end of the day, go make the choices that feel right to you and feel aligned with you. So I feel like your workshop is such a like chef's kiss amazing example of that. And I'm so excited for it.
I'm so excited. And also, I would just say, like, if anything that you learn from anyone is like ruffling you a little bit or making you feel itchy, like the way when readers, make me feel itchy sometimes, I just use that as the universe further confirming for me what it is that I believe and like why it's so important for me to be building a counter narrative against whatever it is that is like causing me discomfort. So, discomfort is really provocative in some ways. And I think it's really important for us to be in those growth spaces.
100%. Things like anger, discomfort, objection, they're all, to me, like a representation of our boundary being crossed, or a boundary being crossed for us. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just information. Just like intuition, it's just information. We get to choose what we want to do with it, right? Like we can act on it or not. Just like we can pull a tarot spread and we can get information and we can decide, okay, I'm going to change that, or I'm gonna just reshuffle and pretend like that didn't happen. I feel like you can do whatever you
Yeah.
want, which I do a lot. I'm like, well, okay, I'm done with that.
Oh yeah. I'll definitely sometimes have a card fall out and I'll be like, well, I didn't really ask a question, so I'm just gonna put that card away.
And even I'm like, I didn't see that.
Right. I was rephrasing my question while you popped out, so bye.
That's the thing about tarot. At least to me, that's the thing about tarot. It's like, yo, you can't change. The answer's not going to change. Like you can keep pulling cards, but it's not going to change.
Right. Right. The tarot's like, we were rephrasing our answer as you were rephrasing your question.
Right. So like,
So
we
we can
know
go
what's
in
working
circle.
out there. Like, come on.
Right.
Oh, well, I want to be thoughtful of your time. We went a little bit over what I said we would be doing, but any final thoughts before we sort of wave goodbye to each other and go on with the rest of our days?
I guess I would just circle all the way back and say, see how you can access joy today, because joy is what's going to
I like
sustain
that.
us through all of this mess. So my thought is that I'm going to go figure out how to access joy, even though I've had so much joy in this conversation. And hope to see all of you all later on the
Yeah.
24th.
Yeah, so everyone go sign up for class. Links in our bio, probably us also in Samara's bio, but
Yes.
definitely go find it on Holisticism and go join. And if you can't find it, just email me or just shoot me a DM and I'll help you out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was so fun. Thank you so much for making the time for us and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Of course. All right. Take great care, everyone. Bye now.
Bye.